Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about the arm structure and the way we use our arms when we move and play. Most of the times when we talk about technique, we only refer to the left hand technique, the hand, the fingers, the palm, maybe a bit of the forearms, but we never really talk about the whole structure, and how does that move, especially when we play. And this is really important if you think about it, because when you move a finger, your whole system activates, you can't really you're not moving just from here. So I'm going to talk about some general misconceptions or some things that I found really interesting in my body mapping exploration. So just to summarize what a body map is, it's our internal representation of our bodies, how we think, how we perceive movement happening in our body. What happens many times, what we perceive as being a movement happening in our body is not necessarily anatomically correct, but our bodies are still going to try to move in the way we think we move. So you can see how the difference between the way we're built and the way we think we move could generate some problems and tensions and things like this. So the way we're going to do this today, I'm just going to outline the main areas of your arm structure. And I think it's important to say arm structure when you're talking about your whole moving system, because when you say arms, you don't really, it's such an abstract term. Like for some people, arms could mean just the hand or the forearm, or maybe just till here, till your shoulder. But the arm structure really encompasses everything that produces movement in your arm. So we're gonna start actually with the clavicle, which is this really neat bone here I'm trying to show you guys. And many times we don't really consider this as being part of the arm structure. We map our arms as only moving from here. But if you trace your collarbone till the point that it meets your sternum, right there, as you see it in the video, that really is the only joint where your arm connects to the body. I'm gonna say that again. The only joint where your arm meets the body. And it's called the Glenohumeral Joint. You see, as I'm moving my arm, all angles, that joint is moving. For people that haven't mapped this as part of their arm structures, you're gonna see them struggling with movement because all they think is they move from here. So they're gonna lock this area, which causes a lot of tension, when breathing, which we're gonna talk about just a little bit because it involves the arm structure. So they don't include this in their body map. And when they move, you'll see them very here, As opposed to when I'm breathing, if I have this mapped as part of my arm structure, it's going to move up and down with my breath. So when you map your arm structure, start with the collarbone, okay? Then, well, this is harder to show in the video, but I'll try my best. We have our shoulder blade, also known as the scapula, which is also part of the arm structure, because if you think about it, when you extend your arm or when you reach for a difficult shift here, let's say your fingers initiate the movement, your forearm carries through, then you have your humerus, but what really does the full extension is your shoulder blade. So it's really, really, really important to map this as part of your arm, especially for the right hand and the guitarist, because since we rest our forearm on the guitar, there's not really as much motion happening here, definitely not compared to this. So many times what happens, this arm is going to be a lot freer, which will automatically cause the shoulder blade to move more. But in the case of this arm, because this is static, it doesn't move that much, Which is not really true, because micro movements happen all the time when you do something as subtle from switching from D strings to D strings. Well, that was not really subtle, but you get my point. Like, there's always movement to be happening here in your shoulder blade and your clavicle, as we discussed. So I think it's important when you approach the guitar to really think of your arms as a whole, you know? So remember, clavicle, shoulder blade, which they attach together, then your humerus, your upper arm attaches to that shoulder blade, you know, which causes these various degrees of motions to happen. And what else do we have? We have two bones in our forearm. We have the humerus and the radius, but this would really take me just like an entire 1 hour video just to explain these two. So just remember we have two bones here that they go like this when we rotate, just like these two fingers. There's so much to be talking about this, but I'm not going to go into all the details of this. You know, then we have our wrist, and another misconception about the wrist is that we map it really low. We map our wrists here. You know, you think of a wristwatch, which is here really, but our wrists are really here. You know, in this area. These two bones that we see here. This bone is the end of the ulna, which also ends with your elbow bone is really just your ulna. And this here, well, no. This here is your radius, you know? So the wrist really doesn't start until here. This is your wrist. So when you map your wrist here, suddenly you become so much more aware of all the freedom these 8 bones in your wrist really allow you to do, you know? People who map their wrists here usually think of their wrists just like this, like a hinge. But if that was to be true, then you wouldn't be able to do these complex movements and circling movements and all of this, you know. That's because your wrist is here. And it's taking me to the last part of our arm structure, which is the finger bones, you know. Many times we map them, we map our fingers from the inside of the palm. What do I mean by this? We look at these lines, because this line here accurately describes this knuckle, you know, and this one. But when you look at this one, it really doesn't match the mapping of your finger, because your knuckle bone is here, but that line is here. So your knuckle bone really is here. Many people map their fingers from here and they try to move from here, which causes so much tension in your palm, and if you want to call it palm, in your finger and everything, you know. And another important part is to notice that we have another bone here that attaches to the wrist. And the thumb has 1, 2, 3. 3 bones in it. That really was a revelation for me, because I would move a lot from here, from the second joint, instead of moving from the third, which caused a lot of tension. And you can actually see this little crest, I don't know how to really say it, you know, this little thing here, because I was moving so much from here, this joint was sort of overly used. So this is pretty much my 9-minute talk on the whole arm structure. Remember, we have our collarbones that move when we move our hands, they also move. Just experiment with the movement of this joint, but also when we breathe. As I try to demonstrate right now. Then we have our shoulder blade, which is just as important in the movement and the freedom of the arms. You know, that's really what's going to get you the fluidity of movement that you see it in so many great players, you know. We have our humerus, and then we talked about the radius and the ulna just a little bit, because that would be such a long topic. Just remember that when they rotate, they go over each other in the ways that, like, the ulna stays like this, and the radius, which is this bone, comes over. This is really important. Like, this rotation did take me a while to figure. Then the wrist, which is really here, allowing us for, like, really complex movements, and then really mapping the movement of our bones. I hope that helped. I hope it wasn't too confusing. You might want to go and watch it a couple of times just to get what I was so clumsily trying to say. And have fun.